Okay, so here we are, our happy hour for, is it September? It's almost October now. Oh my gosh. I think we started this in early April, didn't we, Brian? Um,
It's been a long
Show up
time.
tomorrow.
it's been a long time, but it's gone really quickly, hasn't it? And I think everyone's getting zoomed out now, but we're really grateful that everyone is here to join us because we have an amazing guest, Jeff Richardson. And most of you have probably been to his website, iPhone JD, and he's here to talk all about using his mobile devices, iPads, iPhones, and anything else to lawyer. He is a lawyer himself down in Louisiana. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And so tell us a little bit about what's this iPhone JD website that you started and why did you start it?
So I'm an attorney down here in New Orleans, and I've always been interested in technology ever since I first started using, my very first computer was something called a Sinclair computer in the early 1980s, I suppose. And so I've been a tech nerd ever since. But when the iPhone came out, I loved the idea of having a small little computer that I could carry around. And I remember when it came out in 2007, I was like, this is great. I totally need to get it. And then I learned it didn't even work with corporate email, like Microsoft Exchange at my law firm, like, oh. But the next year in 2008, they did add that support and they added an app store. And there was just so much excitement surrounding it that I was like, I jumped at getting one and thought, maybe I'll start a website to sort of talk about how to use it. Some friends of mine had always encouraged me. A friend of mine here in New Orleans is named Ernie Svensson. He was one of the original bloggers on the internet, Ernie the attorney. And he's like, oh, Jeff, you should have a website. And once the iPhone came out, I'm like, well, that might be something to talk about, more than just what I had for lunch today or something. And so I started iPhone JD in 2008. So here we are. It's been almost a dozen years later. And I love writing about the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple Watch and all the Apple technology and how you can use it in your law practice. And it's been great. It's been great fun.
So it sounds like you're tripped out.
I heard you actually use a BlackBerry. Is that true?
I have used a BlackBerry in the past life, back when that was still a thing. But yeah, I remember the days when that was part of your lawyer costume, right? Of course you had a BlackBerry. One of my attorneys that I work with had two BlackBerries, like a bat belt, the multiple BlackBerries for different things. So, but we've come a long way from there. I was a big Trio user. I used to love the Palm Trio way back when. So.
Well, now I saw that split phone, which is totally off topic. What's the Microsoft Duo?
Isn't that, oh, well, there's so many different ones. There's the Microsoft one that sort of splits, it has two frames, but there's also a cell phone that my son was just showing me that the phone, it's like a phone, but then another screen flips like this. So you have like a T looking thing. And I support the creativity, but I don't think that I will want to get there. But what I think we all want is, if any of us watched like the Westworld show where they would like fold up their iPad device into a tiny little thing and then it would sort of get bigger and get smaller. Maybe at some point in the future we'll have one of those, but not quite yet.
Right. I think that's probably my aspiration because I am one of a laptop people. I will carry my laptop everywhere and I won't use my mobile devices, partly because of my eyesight and it's just getting worse and worse over the past several months, but also because I am always concerned that I've gone on my iPhone before, I flipped through emails and I didn't catch an email or I hit reply all accidentally. And that can be really problematic when you have clients and lawyers on your email.
But it's funny you mentioned eyesight, Melissa, because that would actually be a reason that I prefer an iPad to a laptop. I have a laptop that we're talking on right now, but I often joke that it's right here next to my desk and it never moves. I always leave it here, even when I travel and stuff. I always just take my iPad with me because everything that I need is right there on my iPad. And unlike a laptop where I find things being pretty small, with my iPad, I can look closer, look further away. I can pinch to zoom. So I actually find if I'm reading the fine print in the contract, so to speak, I would far prefer to have that PDF file on my iPad. That I see the laptop as being a disadvantage in terms of being able to see things, but that's just me.
Do you get a new iPad with every model that comes out?
Not every model. I usually get the new iPhones every year. And whenever they have presumably, as we're recording this, it's, the very end of September, the rumors that Apple, it's not much of a rumor. Every year, Apple comes out with new phones in the fall. And this year, presumably that'll come out in 2 weeks. And I definitely will get one. I always like getting that. For the iPads, on the other hand, I used to get them almost every single time. But the last update to the iPad Pro earlier this year was so close to the model that I have already from 2 years ago. It added a few interesting features to it that I didn't really think lawyers had a need for, like this thing called LiDAR, that it could see your room and it could see like, this shape is over here and this shape is over here, things that would be interesting for augmented or virtual reality, but is not going to help me draft the next appellate brief. So I didn't get the last iPad Pro, but it wouldn't surprise me if, whenever the next one comes out, maybe I will get that. So iPads, I'm like maybe everyone, maybe every other one. iPhones, I'm pretty consistently getting them. Not only because I like having the latest and greatest, but now that I've got kids who always want to gobble up the other devices, there's a lot of people in my house to instantly get value out of last year's iPhone. So.
Well, that's a good question. You're in your house, and how is your Wi-Fi with all of that? Because you have all these devices connected. Do you have anything special in your house to make sure you can access your Wi-Fi or your cellular on all of your devices?
Yeah, I mean, I have good Wi-Fi. I mean, it depends. I'm jealous of the people that can get fiber to their house, because I really think that's the future and that's the fastest. We have fiber through AT&T in New Orleans. They have not yet quite made it to my block. Like I could almost see from my house where they're located. They're close, but they're not there yet. But through our cable provider, Cox in New Orleans, I do have gigabit internet. So it's plenty fast. And one of the big upgrades that we made at my house during the pandemic was one of those Eero systems, like the mesh networking. I had previously had, obviously Wi-Fi and repeaters and stuff. I used to use the Apple product called the Airport, but there were definitely zones in my house where the internet speed was just pitifully slow. And like everybody else during the pandemic, when my kids were doing virtual school and I was trying to talk to clients and having far more video conferences than ever before in my life, it was getting to be a bear. Not because the internet wasn't fast enough, but just because the Wi-Fi wasn't fast enough. So we upgraded to something called the Eero Pro. I wrote about it on iPhone JD a few months ago. And so like I now have 3 of those units in my house, and they do a fantastic job. It is fast. I mean, all the way to the very back of my backyard, I can get a very strong Wi-Fi signal, which means that everybody can find whatever little nook and corner they want to go to when we're all at home and still have good internet there.
Is that an Amazon product? I'm just thinking about Amazon.
It wasn't originally, but Amazon did buy them. They did. And in fact, I saw just last week, Amazon had a whole bunch of product announcements. And one of them was an upgrade to the Eero to support Wi-Fi 6 instead of Wi-Fi 5, which is in theory will allow faster Wi-Fi in the future. The very latest iPhone does support Wi-Fi 6. Now, as a practical matter, are you going to actually notice, the New York Times website load that much faster? I don't know. But if I was getting one today, it's something to consider if you want to have, buying the next generation of technology as opposed to the one that's been around for a little bit longer.
I did the same thing. I got the Netgear Orbeez. There was like a 3-pack, and I did the one.
They also get very good reviews, yeah.
And it was, I mean, the difference has been unbelievable. I mean,
mesh is such a it really is a game changer in Wi-Fi. I think it's, if you've got, unless you have a small house, but if you have a larger house with multiple floors and stuff like that, old construction that the Wi-Fi needs to go through, it makes a huge difference.
Jeff, do you believe in wearing pants on Zooms, and what color shorts are you wearing right now?
I'm at my office right now, so I am not wearing the pajamas, as my son sometimes does when he does remote school from home. So no, I am fully dressed. I have to take my word for it, though. Having said that, I will admit that there was one time earlier in the spring where I had sort of a, suddenly clients went to Zoom like they've never done before, right? And so like I very quickly ran to the computer and I had like the long sleeve shirt, and I may have even thrown on a jacket to look a little bit nicer, but I was wearing shorts and I felt a little silly, but nobody knows until now. Everybody knows, I guess. But
So besides just the devices that you have, before we get into some of the apps, what other tools or fun stuff do you have? I mean, I see you wearing AirPods. How do you, I mean, there are lawyers that they want paper. And so when they're looking at that appellate brief on their iPad, they're going to want to be able to mark it up. What's the easiest way or tools to actually use these?
I'm really, in terms of the different devices, I'm very much a part of the Apple ecosystem, and happily so. As Brian was joking earlier, it used to be that we had a BlackBerry for this and this for that and all sorts of different things. But Apple does a great job of, I think that they've got the best mobile products, but I also think they do a great job of making them all work together. Unlike, for example, the Android world, where you have different manufacturers with different software updates and different features. And so, the core mobile tech products that I'm using is, my iPhone, of course. I've got the iPhone 11 Pro, whatever the latest top of the line is. I've got my iPad Pro, which I really like because although the regular iPad is also really good too. In fact, Apple just came out with an iPad Air about a month ago, actually a few weeks ago. That's really, really, really nice. But the iPad Air is sort of the traditional iPad size, which is nice because it's small and portable, but I have the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which is even bigger. So when I'm looking at documents, if it's in, portrait orientation, it's basically like an 8.5, 11 sheet of paper. And when I turn it to landscape, as I normally have it, things are even bigger. Like I was telling you before, it's easier to read things. And so that plus my Apple Watch, which I use for notifications, and my AirPod Pros, which I use for in my ears. I guess that's just about it in terms of the mobile technology combinations. But so, for example, what you mentioned before about paper and reading things, I'm mostly an appellate practitioner. And so a big part of my practice has always been, writing, researching, drafting, and then reviewing and annotating briefs. And there was definitely a time of my life where I thought, I've been practicing for about I started in 94, so 26 years now. And, it used to be that I would spend some time looking at the computer and then some time looking at paper, because I think, for example, in writing my own briefs, when you view something just a little differently, it allows you to catch mistakes and see things differently. So like if you're drafting your paper on the computer and you're drafting your brief and you're reading it on the computer, I think there's a value in pulling away from that and reading it in a different form because your eye just sees things differently. And so it used to be, I would always print out that brief to edit it, with my red pen and then go back to the computer to make the edits or give it to my secretary. But nowadays, there's no reason to do that because the paper is just an extra step. I can just go and read it on my iPad, and that way I can just sit there in my chair and lean back with my iPad and look at my brief. And I'm still looking at it in a different form than the computer, but it's all digital. It can go back and forth. And I've got Microsoft Word on my iPad. I can just edit it right there if I want to, or I can annotate it there and go back to the computer. So everything stays digital. And I actually like that. In fact, because it's all digital, all my old drafts are there, everything's there. If I deleted an argument 2 weeks ago and I changed my mind and I want to go back to it, I've got all of that stuff there. Whereas with paper, who knows where the paper is? Notes that I took from a witness interview 18 months ago, I guess in the old days, they would be stuck in a red weld somewhere in a file cabinet. Who even knows where they are? But nowadays, just everything's on my iPad. And I'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a little bit through an app that I use called Goodnotes for taking notes. So, I'm about as paperless can be. There's a few pieces of paper on my desk just because they came through the mail, but when they come in, I try to immediately scan them. My secretary knows that when something comes in, she immediately scans it because I don't want to see the paper. I just want to have it scanned so I can work with it.
What about exhibits to your briefs, or for us that are litigators, documentary evidence, whether it's financial disclosures or discovery, things of that nature? One of the problems that I've run into is organization. For our complex matrimonial cases, I still have my paralegals make big notebooks, of all the papers because it's easy to find what you want with the index. Are there certain tools or software that you would like for that? Because we have the scanner, we get everything in, but I just find it, and I'm pretty good at being paperless, but in terms of all the documents and something like a discovery review, I have trouble doing that purely digital.
Sure. And I understand. I don't criticize if you want to look at it in paper. I'm very much a strong believer of use the tool that is best for your practice. Example of that is we use PCs at my law firm, but if somebody wants to use a Mac and they truly believe that they're more productive doing so, I say, use the tool that's going to make you the best attorney you can be. Having said that, for me, and I do trial work, even though I'm mostly an appellate attorney, I just find that by putting things in folders and stuff and keep things, organized that way, that's really a fine way for me to organize things. So just to give you a little bit more specifics, there's an app that I use called there's a number of apps for the iPad that can store and organize and annotate PDF files. The one that I'm using right now is called PDF Expert by a company called Readle. And it does just a great job of, much like your computer, creating folders and subfolders, and you organize your documents. And so whatever I have associated with the case, I just have folders and subfolders there. And I sort of break things up in two ways, because things that I am comfortable syncing using Dropbox, like for example, as a litigator, anything that's a public pleading or something like that, that stuff I just put in Dropbox. And so that way I can access it from my work computer, my iPad, my home computer, my iPhone, whatever you want, because it's just in Dropbox. And then stuff that is just more confidential, then I still just set up a separate folder in Readle for it. My letter to the client about how we're going to win the case or how we might lose the case, that sort of stuff. And but as a result, everything's right there in PDF Expert. And so no matter where I'm working, I mean, gosh, this is so useful during the pandemic. Whether I'm sitting in my office, my computer's in front of me, but my iPad's right here with everything on it, or if I'm working from home for pandemic reasons or otherwise, or it's just the weekend and I'm working, everything's right there. And so it's, everything is at my fingertips. So I prefer reading it that way. If I want to see, I can pinch to make things bigger, make things smaller. I can annotate files. I can, even within the folder structure within Readle, I can just tag a particular file. Like when you have a list of files, I can like make one of them yellow. So like, for example, as an appellate lawyer, I will have every appellate document in the case in one folder. But a couple of them are the important ones, right? Like, the appellant brief and the appellee brief and things like that. And so I'll just I'll just tag those to be yellow or orange or something like that, so that even as I'm scrolling through the list of files, it jumps out at me. And in that sense, I mean, it takes a time to get started, but everything is in one place. I never have to worry, is it in this black binder or is it that green binder? And is that one still in my car or is it home or wherever else? It's just all there.
So Readle is actually, that's the same one that I use, is PDF Expert. They have they also have a Scanner Pro for the phone.
I use that too.
Where I scan with my phone and it goes over there. But one of the issues that I ran into, and you may have something similar. So in our office, we're PC in the office, and at home we were all Mac, all of us.
Same here.
I did finally get to the point where sometimes it wasn't even so much the software, it was the keyboard shortcuts that were getting to me. And so at one point I had remapped my MacBook keyboard to mimic a Windows keyboard. So I could do like Control C, because between Command, which is Alt, I was playing with that. But now recently during COVID, I've actually shifted and I've gotten away from more Mac and I've gone to more PC just for the seamlessness of a lot of the programs and apps. We switched over to some software and they had it was available for Mac, but it's not native. And so, have you ran into any issues doing PC in the office, Mac at home? I mean, if you're working on a document in the office, can you pick it up on your iPad? How do you do all that?
Yeah, in fact, when I started working at the firm that I work for is called Adams and Reese, and I'm in New Orleans, but we've got offices throughout the South, including a bunch in Florida where you are, Brian. When I started Adams and Reese in '94, we were a Mac law firm, which was really rare for larger law, because we're a pretty big law firm, to have a law firm of hundreds of attorneys using Macs. I mean, there weren't very many of us in the '90s. And then around the early 2000s, we switched to PC. At first it was dual platform, and then we went to PC. And we did that for the reason that you sort of referenced, Brian, that all the software was there, especially for attorneys, right? All the vertical software, document management systems and client relationship management and whatever other law tech buzzwords you want to use. It was all on the PC. Nowadays, I mean, I actually find a lot of that stuff is cloud-based, so it becomes more platform agnostic. But having said that, we still use all PCs here. And I mean, it's an issue. I mean, I won't deny that, there are times that I will be using, something on like our document management system. The easiest way for me to access our document management system is using the PC. The one that we use called iManage, it does have a web interface for certain versions, and it's got apps, and they're good, but they're not the same. They're not as good. And so what I will do, if I'm working at home, for example, and I've got my iPad set up, and if I'm working at home, I may actually have an external Bluetooth keyboard and even an external mouse next to me. So it's sort of like a laptop. But if I need to do something that's truly PC centric, I can use remote access software to connect to my work computer, which is just sitting right over there and it's always on. And so I can make my iPad screen look just like my computer screen, whether I'm sitting at the office or whether home or whether I'm in Timbuktu, wherever I am. I can get on and get it. And usually it's sort of a get in, get that document, and then get back to the iPad world. Because most of what I'm doing is I'm just reading documents. I'm annotating documents, which is, fantastic with the Apple Pencil for circling and highlighting and everything else on my iPad, and typing something in Microsoft Word. For hardcore brief writing, yeah, that's better on a computer. But for editing a brief, it works fine on an iPad. So I just use whatever tool is in front of it. If I'm in front of a computer, I use the computer, and then my iPad becomes like a second screen to the side. So I'm typing the document on the computer, I'm writing my appellate brief, but I'm looking at my iPad right here next to me to see the contract, to see my opponent's brief with my annotations on why I think they're wrong and why we should still win. And so I just use the tools in tandem. And it's not perfect, but there is no, the only perfect solution is to have your one laptop that's with you 24/7 so that everything's always the same no matter where you are. But that's got drawbacks too, because there are some tasks that are well suited to a computer, and there are other tasks that an iPad is better for, and there are other tasks that an iPhone is better for. And so I just personally prefer to use whatever the best tool is for the particular job that I'm doing.
What do you use to link your iPad as a second screen? Do you use Duet?
I've tried that stuff, and that's interesting, but usually it's not a true second screen as in it's a second monitor. It's just, I'm looking at PDF Expert on my iPad
So it's
to look at
independent.
a contract.
So it's independent. Okay.
Right. Yes. Although, I have my email on the computer and I have my email on the iPad, but it's through different so it will go back and forth that way. But yeah, I sometimes use those programs. I've played around with them. I haven't really felt them. For me, there's no real advantage that I need a true second screen. It's great that they're out there, and I love that you have that option. But I just haven't found them to be that useful in my personal practice.
What about organization, like task management, management of ideas, organizing on boards, or any of that?
Yeah, good question. What I've been using, I switch around a lot, but for probably the last year or so, I've been using an app called Things. And I think it's in version 3.0 now, and it works really well. Things is overkill for what I use it for. Like, you can, if you're one of these getting things done people that has things, tagged by dates and they come in, you can do a lot of sophisticated things with it. I don't. I use it as a simple list that I can have the things on. I can drag things up and down to organize my list. I can check things off the list. I can add them onto the list. And I like that I can just, I can add something to the list from my iPhone. And then when I look at things on my iPad, everything's there. And I sort of use that to keep track of what I need to do. And for my particular practice, that works. If you're an IP attorney with a million patent dates and stuff, you're going to need something far more sophisticated to keep track of upcoming deadlines and things like that. But for me, things has worked great for keeping track of my tasks. Having said that, I also really like the Reminders app on the iPhone and iPad and stuff, because I love that I can just, tell my watch, hey, and I won't say the word SIRI because I don't want this thing to start beeping, but hey, who, remind me at 4 o'clock tomorrow to call John. And then 4 o'clock, I just say it. And it's like having a personal assistant right here with me. And then 4 o'clock tomorrow, it'll say, hey, Jeff, time to call John. Or better yet, I'll get the alert on my watch. So even if I'm, in a meeting with someone else, back in the days when we had meetings with other people, I will just have a little discreet tap on my wrist for my Apple Watch. And then I can just sort of glance down and see, oh yeah, I need to call John as soon as this is done. So I love that system. So, but that's really my combination right now, the Things app and the Apple built-in Reminders app.
Do you have anything that organizes, say, your briefs, like a Trello or something that might allow you to have a flow to?
Yeah, I haven't done that. And I know people love like the mind mapping software and that sort of stuff. I've played around with it. It's just not the way I work. I know that there's great stuff out there, but it's not something I've played with myself. Not seriously, at least.
So tell us some tools. So a lot of people have iPhones. Tell us some, let's start with iPhone.
Well,
iPhone apps?
Let me say this before I even get to apps. The breaking news, as of it's been 1 or 2 weeks ago, Apple updated the operating systems on its mobile devices to iOS 14 and iPad 14. And one of the cool things that they added to it is widgets. Now, people that use Android are like, oh, we've had widgets forever, ha, ha, ha. But they haven't been on the iPhone until now, and they're really great. And I'm really starting to like them. And you won't be able to see from a screen like this. But,
yeah, what's a widget?
But so for example, in addition to your regular app icons like I have here, I've added 2 widgets at the top. And the one at the top left I have that just has the date, I just put that there for today's purposes. Normally, it doesn't just say that today is the 29th. Normally, it actually shows me a list of my upcoming events. And because there's sort of, attorney-client stuff there, I'm not going to show it on camera. But every time I look at my iPhone screen now, I instantly see you've got this coming up at 3, you've got this at 3:30, reminder to do this. And it's nice because, even when I look at my iPhone screen or my iPad screen all the time, just through work. And as I look at it and I glance at it, it's just showing me as a reminder, these are things that are upcoming. And you can add widgets for so many different things. It's brand new. So many apps haven't even added it yet. But the other widget that I have here is just a weather app, so I can always see the weather. And the widgets are neat because you can sort of swipe on them. So, right now I'm looking at the weather, but if I swipe down on this one right here, I can see a little weather map. And they automatically, you can have them set to automatically rotate whenever the iPhone thinks it should rotate it. And so sometimes I'll see a weather map if there's rain coming. Sometimes I'll see what the weather is. Sometimes I have the photos widget. So it'll just show me a picture of my kids from 10 years ago, back when they were still cute. Things that just sort of make me happy and make me more productive. And so I love widgets for being more productive. And so if you haven't even upgraded to the iOS 14 or the iPad 14 yet, do so. You should do so anyway because of all the security updates. But check out this widget feature. I'm putting together a post on it, and I'll have something on iPhone JD maybe next week on this about some suggestions for how to work with widgets. But I'm finding that they are incredible. They're great productivity tools, and they're also sort of delightful. So with that, but there's a million other apps that I use for.
Hold on, before you go there, Jeff, just so you guys know, if you check the chat, Melissa posted the link from Apple that tells you how to add widgets.
Excellent. Yeah, because you have to sort of go through a step. You have to learn how to do it. Another one that's right there on my home screen is I use 1Password. Melissa and Brian, do y'all use password managers?
I use Dashlane.
Melissa?
Yeah, LastPass is what I use.
Okay, yeah, and those are some of the other big ones. Whichever one you use, I like 1Password because I think it works better on the iPhone, but they all have iPhone apps and they're all good. I think that every person, but certainly every attorney, you need to have a password manager, right? You just do. We've got too much confidential information. No one needs my password, whether it's something boring like my Pacer password or something more important. And so I definitely think you need a password manager. And I could talk for an hour about that, but I'll just leave it at that. But that's one of the useful apps I have. Another one that I like a lot and that I was alluding to earlier on my iPad is I use an app called Goodnotes for taking handwritten notes. And it creates just pages with whatever template you want. I have mine look like a legal pad, and I can just take notes. So I've got different notebooks for each one of my cases, and I can take handwritten notes as I'm talking to the client on the phone or meeting with a witness. And I love that, all of my notes in a case are there, whether they were taken yesterday or taken, 2 years ago. And it does an OCR, it reads my notes. So if I'm just need to search for, where in these 50 pages did I talk about John Doe, I can just, type in Doe and it'll just show all the pages that have with my handwriting the word Doe. So that's a great way to take notes, and I use that app all the time and like it quite a bit. What else? One for the pandemic age where we're not perhaps shopping in stores as much and having more things delivered to us, there's a great app called Deliveries. I don't know if y'all use this one. The Deliveries app is fantastic because whenever you get like an email saying that, this is your tracking number or whatever it is, you can just sort of forward those, you can put those emails into the Deliveries app. And so it will alert me. Every time I look at the app, it will say, this package from Amazon is going to be here in 3 days, and this thing from this other company is going to be here today. And just to sort of as a central hub to keep track of all the different things that are coming my way, I like the Deliveries app. When I order my new iPhone next month, you can guarantee that I would be putting it in there so I can track it all the way from China through probably Alaska and FedEx and all the way to New Orleans where I live to see where it comes. So
how does that work? Do you have to put in like your UPS or FedEx account info, or it's just by your address?
No, you just put in the tracking code. So the easiest way to do it is if you get an email that says here's your FedEx or your UPS or your whatever tracking code it is, DHL, whatever, just copy it. And as soon as you open up the app, it notices on the clipboard, hey, that's a 15-digit number or whatever the length is. I know that. That's a FedEx number. Do you want me to create a FedEx entry for it? And I say, absolutely. And then it says, do you want to put a name associated with it? And I'll put, whatever, socks or whatever it may
Jeez.
happen to be.
Your
And
poor
then
family with all the packages you must get.
what's that?
You must get a lot of packages for this app to be useful.
More and more, but not all the time, but sometimes I have multiple things, and it's just nice knowing when things are coming and if things are delayed. So that's a fun one. And again, I've been using it more during the pandemic because I don't know about y'all, but I've been ordering a lot more stuff from Amazon that in the old days I might have gone somewhere else to buy.
Yeah. How about any voice dictation? Do you do any voice recognition type app?
Yes, but not with a specific app.
Okay.
Nuance, who makes Dragon, which is like the big one, right? I think it's still on the iPhone and iPad, but they have totally stopped developing it. In fact, they've basically given up on the Mac as well. They're basically going to be all PC. And I think my guess, I mean, I have no inside information, but my guess is the reason that they're moving away from Apple is because they realize that Apple is improving its built-in dictation, and Siri, when it first started, was just sort of a novelty. And nowadays, Siri is pretty good. I mean, if I'm home and there's nobody around me and I need to dictate and I have to write an email that I don't feel like pulling out a keyboard for, I will absolutely dictate the email and have Siri do it, and it's great. I certainly haven't written the next great American novel with it or anything like that, or the next great American brief. But so I use voice dictation a lot, but it's usually limited to like, an email of a couple sentences, or the example I gave you before, remind me at 2 p.m. on Saturday to pick up the laundry or whatever the case may be.
Right. How about any collaboration tools? I mean, I have the Teams app on my iPad, and there's Slack, there are those type of things. I'm not sure if you have others in your firm that you collaborate with when you're not in the office.
Yes, slowly. We had been looking at that stuff at my firm, obviously, because it's been an issue for years. I know that there are a lot of people that live on Slack, that is, especially if you're like a solo or small practitioner, because it's a great way to interact with like-minded people. Whereas, it's easy for me to just walk down the hallway and, well, maybe not as much nowadays, but, in the before times and in the times that will hopefully come, to just walk down the hallway and get some opinions on things. But during the pandemic at our firm, we did implement Teams. And I think most people are using Teams just like we're using Zoom right now as a video conference platform. But we are moving towards using it more for also audio conferences, and then also the collaboration tools of, text, basically it's sort of a replacement for text messages, but in a way that everybody at the firm can access no matter what platform, mobile device you use, and whether it's, iMessage or SMS or whatever it is. So we're taking baby steps towards that. I'm probably using it more than some people at my firm just because I'm interested in it, but I am certainly nowhere close to the people that have been using that for a much longer period of time.
I guess, does your office have a phone, and does it forward to, say, your iPhone or anything like that?
We don't, we use the Cisco systems that I think most everyone else, a lot of big law firms do, and we also have a system that when people leave me a voicemail, it does show up just in my email. And so I can open up my iPhone and just go to the mail message, and I can tap a button and listen to it that way. But what we don't have here, and it's interesting, I know some people use it, is these more sophisticated systems where you can sort of spoof where you're located. So someone can call your office and it will ring your home phone or your cell phone or whatever, and you can sort of work, no matter where you are. Those systems are interesting to me, but I haven't tried them out yet.
Brian, other apps that you've used that you want to talk about?
Well, I've still in the days, Melissa and I were using Slack in the beginning. I've gotten more interested in Microsoft Teams now for the
I noticed you don't respond to me anymore.
Because I try not to, and finally you stop like talking to me, and it works. So I just kind of stick with that. Yeah, but so I have that. We've been using Clio in the office, and I actually do use the Clio app.
Right.
I was trying to pull up files on my phone until we switched over to Net Documents, which is something that I love. And so I have Net Documents for my office document management, which is available anywhere. And we basically, in the past, I started this right before COVID, and we finished it mostly during the beginning stages of COVID. But almost our whole office is cloud-based at this point, which has made things great. Previously, everyone had to log on to a terminal server and access all the files and the software and everything else. And I do think that's the trend, but you're seeing a lot of things now like Microsoft Teams, and I'm interested in that. And so I pulled that up. That's something I hear a lot of people are using. And the good thing is if you have a Microsoft account, it comes with, all this software. It's a package with Word and Excel, and it's very robust. Beyond that, one of the things that I need to get better on is I get introduced to potential clients sometimes in a group text message, which is a blessing and a curse. It gives clients immediate access to me, but being a divorce lawyer, I can't give out my cell phone number to many clients. And so that started a problem. And so what I'll say is two things, Jeff. Do you have any programs that you use, any software for, besides just like a WhatsApp or something, for dealing with text messages, A? And B, the other one is what about apps for saving text messages? If you have a client who's communicating with you, or you're telling your client to save text messages with somebody else, do you have any tools for saving and indexing those?
Yeah, I have, first on the former, I don't use text messaging very often with clients, unless it's sort of a one-off case, like I'm trying to find them because we're meeting up for dinner or something, and I'll just, text them quickly to say that. But in terms of anything that's like an attorney-client, work product type communication, first of all, my law firm actually encourages not to use text messages because of the issues with keeping them and for the document management and all those sorts of things. But it's not a part of my practice. But I think that just has to do with the type of practice I have, where I communicate. Email is so by far the way I communicate with clients and opposing counsel and co-counsel and everything else. So I'm not a big text message person. And on the other question that you asked about preserving text messages for evidence, and I know that for divorce law and family law stuff, that is just got to be this hugest issue. Y'all are the experts in that. Whenever people ask me about it, I have a paper that I got at ABA Tech Show a year or two ago that sort of lists, I think maybe Brett Burney put it together, if y'all know Brett, and he had some of the best technologies for it. And so I gave him that. I have, in fact, I just was involved, I don't do employment law, but as an appellate attorney, you never know what's going to come in through the door. And I just filed some briefs in a US Fifth Circuit case that involves employment law. And of course, text messages are an issue because he was text messaging back and forth with the employer. And so they're in evidence. So, but for me, as an appellate lawyer, by the time that I get to it, they're just in the record on appeal, right? So I didn't have to worry about how to pull them off the phone and authenticate them and all those sorts of issues. So I know there are big issues out there. I just haven't touched them yet in my practice, and I'm sure that you two have.
What about email management? Do you keep emails threaded, unthreaded, use Outlook?
Yeah, we use Outlook in our firm. I prefer to keep them unthreaded, just date order is the way that I like to keep things. And at our firm, we use iManage for our document management system, which again, I think works really well. And so what I try to do is I move my conversations into whatever the appropriate folder is in iManage, so that, for like today's conversations may still be in my inbox, but then everything that is important gets moved over so that by next week, the only things left in my inbox from this week will just be, silly things, things that are not work related. It's what I try to do. In fact, so, just to talk about the iPhone specifically on that one, iManage on my PC, I just have it set up that in my list of folders in Outlook, I have shortcuts in there that link to a specific matter. So, if I get an email in the Jones case, I can just select one email or a whole series of emails, and I can drag them over into a shortcut folder on my PC that will then store them into, the Jeff Richardson email subfolder of emails, subfolder of the Jones case, and that's all set. On my iPhone, because I'm using the Apple Mail app, it doesn't have integration with document. It doesn't have integration with any third-party apps, right, including document management. But the way I faked that is I have created some of these folders in my inbox on Outlook. And so I've told Outlook every time that I drag something into this subfolder, you should automatically move it. It's like a rule. You should automatically move it into the correct folder in iManage. And so I have a little thing, I don't know why, I put a capital M and a capital T. There was a reason I used those initials way back when, I forget now. But move to, I think is what it was. And so I will have MT, the Jones case, MT Smith case, MT whatever. And so when I'm on my iPhone, as I'm doing email triage, at night, and I'm just looking at all these emails, I can say this one, put it in this folder, the MT Jones case. This one, put it in this folder, the MT Smith case. And then so it'll automatically move it into the folder. And then in the background, my computer will put it into the document management system so that tomorrow or next week or next year, if I need to find that email from the client to the opposing counsel, I know that it's stored correctly. And that system works really well for me.
Besides updating all your apps and your operating systems and having a password manager, are there any other security things that you know of that we should think of for our mobile devices?
Gosh, I mean, security is so important. I mean, one thing that I would definitely recommend is having, complex passwords on your devices. Way back when in the wild and crazy mid 2000s, whatever, where you could have like a 4-digit password for your iPhone. I mean, we now know that there are devices that can crack those things. And so what you should do is you need to have longer passwords, whether it's a whole bunch of numbers or whether it's like a long saying, an alphanumeric letters and numbers that just because you don't want someone to access your device. And, as a practical matter, how often does that occur? I don't know. The one that always makes me nervous is crossing the international borders because and again, I haven't had to deal with this much myself, but I know that customs has in their mind unlimited ability to access your devices. And although you can say I'm an attorney and there are some decisions that give you some protection there, I always get nervous about that. But aside from that one edge case, just in terms of anyone else getting access to my device, I definitely need to have a good password for your device, because once you get into your iPhone or your iPad, in some ways that's the crown jewels, right? Because they could read your emails, they could look at your documents, they could look at everything. So like that's a no-brainer. You have to have a good password there. And again, if you use a password manager, you don't have to remember too many of these. You have to remember the password to get into your iPhone, your iPad, your one password or your master password for LastPass or whichever one that you use. And then you can have all your other passwords in there. So that and your password manager. And then other than that, just sort of the common sense of, not exposing things in public and who's looking over your shoulder and those sorts of things. Those are the top ones. One things that you often hear people talk about at like tech seminars is public Wi-Fi and the dangers of that, and should you be using VPN. And for a long time, I was one of the people that would talk about it on the website too. If you're going to be in the coffee shop or the hotel and you're using the public Wi-Fi, you never know if that guy in the corner is actually intercepting all the traffic. I don't want to say don't be cautious. I will just say though that we've been talking about this for 10 years now, and I still have yet to see the big case where an attorney was hacked and client secrets got out because he was using the public Wi-Fi at Starbucks. But again, having said that, just use a VPN. I mean, you can have a VPN set up through your law firm, or you can buy a number of commercial VPN services for very cheap that will at least tunnel your traffic and protect you from others on the same local Wi-Fi. So, I guess it's easy enough to do those, so you might as well. But the biggest security threat for me, though, it's not really unique to the mobile devices. I mean, what keeps me awake at night is things like, phishing attacks at my law firm, people that get the email that purports to be from the bank or purports to be from Facebook, but it's really not. And the bad guys are getting more sophisticated. And some of some of them you look at and the English is so broken and ridiculous. You're like, seriously, you clicked on that? You seriously clicked on that? But sometimes I see them and they're very realistic. And, we teach people, hover over the link, to see where it's going to bring you. Is it going to bring you to johnfacebook.com? Because that ain't the real Facebook. And, that's something that I'm more concerned about, because especially, mobile devices are better because of the security and the sandboxing that they use, that especially the iPhone. The iPhone is fantastic for security. It's another reason I like the iPhone more than Android. But PCs, I mean, that is the Wild West. And if somebody breaks through, and if you have an employee click the bad link and install some malware on your computer, that's what concerns me. I feel like my mobile devices are the places where I can feel safer and more comfortable. It's the PC that worries me.
So you indicated you're an appellate lawyer. So I wanted to wrap this up by saying, I know that there are a lot of litigators out there, and some that have been talking about recently investing for their law firm in multiple, say, iPads, just the basic iPads, and actually preloading them when you go to a courthouse or a trial, making sure that the client can look at it, even handing one up to a judge. What are your viewpoints on things like that for lawyers?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think it's better to have your own personal device that you have custody and control, and it's set up the way that you like it and stuff like that. But I mean, whether the firm gives it to you or it's your own that you set up yourself, that's not really the issue. I definitely think that having those devices is important and great. I've told this story before, and I always thought it was funny that years ago I was trying. I work in New Orleans, but I'm also licensed in Florida, and I was involved at a trial a couple years ago. Gosh, maybe 10 years ago now. And I was handling some legal arguments to the judge, and I had my iPad with me, right? And so it was a hearsay issue, and I just had a case from Westlaw because I just used Westlaw on my iPad during trial to find the case and stuff. And I was making the argument, and my opponent said something, and I was like, well, actually, Your Honor, what the case says is, and I had my iPad right there, I'm like, and I just handed the iPad. And I love that because handing a computer to a judge would be really bizarre, but just handing an iPad, that's sort of like handing, just take a look at this real quick. That's like handing a legal pad or just the case. And so the judge looked at it and he turned to my opposing counsel and said, well, the iPad says it's hearsay. So what do you have to say about that? I'm like, well, there you go. The iPad says it's hearsay. So I guess it really is. But so I think they're fantastic tools in trial. And the other thing is, and again, I'm not really a trial lawyer, so I don't do a lot of that stuff, but I've seen people that with devices like iPads, because you can just walk around with it in your hand, and you can connect through Wi-Fi or whatever your private network is, so that you can be walking around as you talk to the jury, and you can tap on things and have the exhibits come up on the screen. And people that practice and do that well, that's fantastic. I mean, we all know juries expect trials to be just like CSI or those things, and they expect something that's a level way up here, whereas most of us actually practice way down here. And so to the extent that you can use those tools, I just think you come across as much more professional in front of the jury. So that's great. I haven't done much of it myself, just little things here and there for hearings and stuff. But I love when you see a really good litigator really take advantage of the technology, especially mobile technology in the courtroom. It's fantastic.
Well, I think I've got a lot of notes for things that I'm going to go look at when I get off this call, so I can download some new apps. If anyone has any thoughts that they want to share in the chat, I'm happy to ask Jeff. Otherwise, it was just amazing to have you today and to learn more about mobile lawyering and using all these devices to help make us more efficient.
That's great. Thanks. I mean, mobile technology it was fantastic when it first came out, and here we are in 2020, and there's so much you can do. And we are 5 to 10 years away from, whether it's through artificial technology and augmented reality and some of these other tech buzzwords. I mean, these things are going to be so incredibly powerful in the future that if you're not already there, learn to make the most out of your device, so that it's not just your kids that know how to use things to the potential, so that you can do it yourself, because it can really make you a more productive and efficient and a better lawyer for your clients. And plus, it's a lot of fun. So.
Well, for those of you who are not familiar with our particular program, our website is techtalklaw.com. This recording is going to go up there later this evening, and we've just added a new resources page. So all of the different links that we've been sharing in the chat today, we're going to put up on the website so that you can actually click right on them and access all of that just right from our website. So thank you so much, Jeff, Brian. It was good to see you as always. And thanks for everyone who joined us today.
Thanks, everyone.